Hey, welcome back to Two Stupid Guys Trade Stocks. I'm Dylan.
And I'm Vinny. And today we're going to talk about JD.com's reported earnings. Michael Burry owns it. Vinny and I both own Alibaba stock, which is one of their biggest competitors. We're going to take a look at the Chinese e-commerce market segment and look at some numbers comparing the three big giants in that market. We'll get to it.
Two Stupid Guys Trade Stocks.
So I own Alibaba, and I know you do as well, but I do not as of yet own JD or Pinduoduo, and I'm looking at this as a potential investment for myself. So this is kind of where I'm approaching it from, just FYI.
So I own JD. I don't know a lot. I have like 250 shares.
All right. Nice,
Um,
nice.
I bought. I'm not gonna lie to you. As soon as Burry went in, I was thinking about it before that. I was like, "That's all I need. I'm good."
Well, we're gonna see some numbers here. It's still more research to be done, but it's definitely interesting. So this is from Michael Burry's most recent 13F filing. As you can see, Baba was his largest position by market cap or market value, but just right behind it, it was JD.com. He increased his kind of ownership stake in both in the most recent quarter, and he has owned them since basically the end of 2022. So this is a position that he was accumulating throughout the entirety of 2023. Um, Now, big pop on earnings this week. I'm actually not going to look at the earnings report itself. We could do a separate video on that. But market reaction was pretty positive. Okay, so I went back and we're gonna look at the charts real quick, and then we're gonna look at my favorite kind of comparison metric for valuation, which is like the free cash flow yield amongst the large Chinese e-commerce companies, and look at what market share they currently have amongst each other. So we'll look at that in a minute here. But if you want to look at the charts first, Dylan.
Yeah. So this is JD. So it's kind of an odd relationship. So when JD does well, even though they're competitors, Baba will do well, and vice versa. It's like Nvidia and AMD, right? When Nvidia gets a contract, AMD goes up for no explicable reason, which is great. I have a bunch of AMD, but just as a good example, AMD is up almost 30% of the market cap since earnings with zero news. So
Perfect.
nothing. So if
Yeah.
JD keeps having great news, it's actually beneficial if you own Baba.
Yeah.
So weirdly enough,
In,
um,
in, in in
uh,
fairness, they share a lot of macro trends with each other, right? Because
yeah,
they're both operating chiefly in the Chinese market.
um,
But it,
ton of volume on that
yeah,
day. You can see they jumped from 2150 to 2530. They had a little bit of a correction, but they've still finished up a bit. Go to the next one.
yeah. Baba,
Baba, same thing. Jumped up. I don't. We're kind of in a very narrow channel between 70 and 75 that we have been. This gray dashed line is the 100 moving average. JD
mm,
and Baba are both having a difficult time jumping above that. If you zoom out, they've attempted multiple times. So it's coming
yeah,
to a part where we're having higher lows into that average. So something's going to happen
yeah,
here.
yeah.
And
I'm hoping, but Pinduoduo has a very different story from
very
the
different
other two as
graph.
far as valuation. Yep.
Yeah. So it's funny because this is the one I don't own. This has the best graph. So their high is 212. They're actually, I mean, down recently, but they're killing it. They're doing really well stock wise. I think Temu is shit, in my opinion, but stock wise looks good.
Okay, interesting. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the actual slide for Pinduoduo. But so this is JD. This is the one that just reported earnings right here. This is like the insanity of the Chinese market right now from a valuation standpoint. I understand people argue all day and all night that you cannot use traditional like Western metrics to value these companies because there's such a systemic risk of them being CCP controlled entities that you have to worry about that. But look at this: $35 billion market cap with a $23 billion net cash position.
That's unheard of. I didn't know it was that high.
It's
That's
insane.
that's worse than Baba by
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot,
yeah.
by a big percentage.
Mhm. The revenue is higher than Baba actually too. Now, part of that is just because they have a different business model. They're the direct retailer more than Alibaba tries to do that as little as possible, be more a platform company, which is the same thing you'll kind of see with Pinduoduo. So they're not exactly like apples to apples competitors there, but still, a kind of good metric, I guess, in terms of their size in the Chinese e-commerce market. And the revenue growth for the last year was about 3.7%. So not enormous. But the 1 year stock performance down 48.94%, 50% off in a year. And they still had positive growth, right?
Yeah.
trailing 12-month free cash flow is $5.7 billion, giving them a free cash flow yield of almost 50%.
That's better than Baba.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel
I mean,
better about
Baba's
owning your
still really
JD
good.
shares?
Huh?
Do you feel better about owning your JD shares now?
I do. I'm at break even. I think I'm at like 22 or 23 for the buy-in.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with it.
All right. So I'm going to do some more digging, but I might be adding some JD shares to my
Ooh,
portfolio soon.
guys,
All
this
right.
is a big deal. When
Yeah.
Vinny
What's
buys
that?
something, he doesn't do it often, right?
I don't do it
He
often.
he just recently decided Intel was a bad idea after like 15 years. This is a pretty big deal.
Absolutely. So Alibaba, this is the one that I own. $184.5 billion market cap as of today, $68.6 billion net cash position, $130 billion in revenue last 12 months. 6% growth rate. Actually, I took that from their most recent quarterly growth rate. Their actual yearly so far was 9%, but their calendar is a little skewed. So they're going to be reporting like the next their full year, the next quarter. So because they're 3 months off from the calendar.
Right.
Yeah. Stock performance down 16.5%, 7% over the last year. Okay. Not nearly as bad as JD, but
JD.
still negative territory, especially when you look at the fact that the SP 500 was up like what, 23% last year. But trailing 12-month free cash flow of $24.25 billion, giving them a free cash flow yield of 21.2%.
So it's still ridiculous. It's just if you compare it to JD, it doesn't look as impressive, but that's still absolutely disgusting because I think Apple's 3
Yeah. So
ish.
when you're looking at kind of the free cash flow yield, to me, anything over 10 that is still a solid company that's growing, even a little bit is phenomenal deal. All right. You're getting down to 5%. I will pay that for a company that has great growth, like double-digit percentage growth. And if we get down to 2.5, 3%, that's kind of the range where it's a no-go for me, even if they had phenomenal growth. Okay.
Okay.
Now we're going to look at Pinduoduo. Market
Hmm.
cap $155 billion. Okay. So that is the second largest by market cap. They have actually at points exceeded Alibaba's market cap. Net cash position, all these companies are cash positive. They don't have a lot of debt. So net cash positive 25.6 billion. All right. They had $28 billion in revenue last year. So it's the smallest as far as that goes. The nice thing about being so small is look at this revenue growth number. This is the most recent quarter, 94% year over year. 94.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
That's gross. But I mean, they were smaller. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
actually,
Uh,
but their market cap is still 5 JDs, which is pretty wild.
it is. It is indeed. That's why the stock is up 25% in 1 year. All right. Now, I actually sent Dylan a video clip earlier. There was a Financial Times piece that came out yesterday about Pinduoduo, Temu, and some of the shenanigans and their kind of secretness and a willingness to not really disclose things publicly. So this was an interesting one. Their free cash flow. They don't actually list any purchase of property, plant, equipment that I could find on their financial statement. So that's not real free cash flow. This is just their operating cash flow. It's you really should
That's
deduct from that what it takes to maintain the business, right? So that's not a real good number. That's higher than it really should be, is my point there. Because
okay.
even if you are more of a platform company, which is what they are attempting to be, they still have to maintain servers and infrastructure. So that doesn't make sense. But if I calculate it based upon that, giving them the full credit for it, it's 13.7% free cash flow yield.
So it's
Uh,
likely lower.
yes, that's
And
the maximum
Chinese.
it could be. Yeah, and Chinese. All right,
Don't like that
that's
at
why I
all.
gave them the red asterisk there.
Yeah, so you're paying Baba and JD and PDD will never be valued at the same as on Amazon, Target, whatever you're trying to compare it to, because the risk is not the same. There's still a risk that these go to zero. It's small in my opinion,
Yeah.
but there's always a risk that what was that Chinese Starbucks one that was just like lying about everything?
Oh God, I forgot their name already.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
was everything was a lie. Oh, Luckin
Yeah.
Coffee.
Yeah. Looking Coffee.
There we
Yep.
go. There's always a risk with that, so you're going to pay a discount. I just think the discount on JD more so apparently is absurd. It's a little bit absurd. Also,
Yeah.
JD has a drone airport. Enough said, man. That's it. That's all you need.
Yeah, totally, man. Drones are the way of the future. So, to kind of give a comparison here, I kind of just basically looked at the revenue from these three companies to give you an idea of what portion of the Chinese e-commerce market they controlled. Now, this isn't looking at the market overall. This is just amongst these three, but to give you a relative comparison in terms of revenue number amongst these three. Like Pinduoduo is clearly the outlier here in terms of their size, which helps explain that 94% year-over-year growth, which is just absolutely phenomenal. And we've seen or touched upon them in other ways. If you remember from the most recent Meta earnings, another stock I own, they talked about the massive kind of ad spend they saw coming out of Temu. And like, if you spent any time on Instagram or Facebook over the last like couple of quarters at least, you've been no doubt bombarded with Temu ads, right?
I've had a couple. I mean, the amount of shitty things that like it's just you're buying stuff that breaks immediately. It's like Wish or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So as far as like the next kind of major news here, so we do have a little bit of potential catalyst coming up, as the third member of this triumvirate here will be reporting earnings sometime the next week or two. It now they this is kind of goes to them moving in silence. This is like the notorious BIG of Chinese companies here, with real bad boys move in silence and violence. You with me?
Oh boy, that was a deep
So,
reference.
so they only they will report the date for their earnings like a week ahead of time. So they don't really give you a firm date. This is what Nasdaq estimates their kind of earnings announcement to be, is around March 18th. But we'll get an announcement, and then a week later we'll like, get the actual earnings. So it's something that could move these stocks. So like I think I'm going to do a little bit more due diligence over the weekend. I might do a separate video just entirely about JD and looking at them. But they're
Mm.
climbing my ladder and making me very intrigued about adding that. Although I wouldn't think I'd want more Chinese stock exposure, but damn, that 49%, that's
Yeah,
insane to me.
just as how different me and you are. Burry bought it, and I had already looked at it for a little bit, so I was like, "That's not for me." And now you're like, "I might buy it. I'm gonna buy 100 more shares tomorrow." I don't even need to know.
All right, guys. Well, let us know what you think about JD.com and other Chinese retail companies down in the comments down below. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Have a good one.